Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets sped by, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Let us be in an attitude of prayer in whatever way is comfortable for you in your tradition. O God, our hope and refuge, 20 years have passed, and we as a nation, and especially we in emergency services, are still in distress. It is good that in our distress we still come quickly to you, and you are there for us. The shock and horror of that tragic day have subsided, replaced now with an emptiness, a longing for an innocence lost. We come remembering those who lost their lives in New York, Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania. We are particularly mindful of the sacrifice of the public servants, fire, law enforcement, EMS, who demonstrated the greatest love of all by laying down their lives for those they did not know, rushing in as others rushed out. We commit their souls to your eternal care and celebrate their gifts to a fallen humanity. We come remembering, and we come in hope, not in ourselves, but in you, and in the innate goodness of the people of this land. As foundations we once thought immovable have been shaken, we are reminded once again of the illusion of security. In commemorating this tragedy, we give thanks for your presence in our time of need, and ask that that presence would continue to guide us in ways that are pleasing to you, ways that can be a light to the world and a beacon of hope and promise in our divided world. Hear our silence now, O God, as we pause to remember those lost, each in our own way. Amen.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. September 11th, 2001, I was 34 years old. My children were not born yet, and there were only 8 of us left on the department now that were still working that day. It was my second year in the department, and I was just finishing my 24-hour shift on second shift. I was still at Central Station having coffee in the kitchen when at 8:46 Eastern Standard Time, American Airlines Flight 11 bound for Los Angeles International Airport crashes into the north face of the North Tower, World Trade Center 1, between floors 93 and 99. Good Morning America was still on in the kitchen, and the departing second shift crew members and the on-duty third shift crew members saw it in disbelief. It was impossible to understand how a plane could run into a building like that. By the time I had left and turned the news on again at home, a second plane, United Airlines Flight 175, bound for Los Angeles International Airport, at 9:02 Eastern Standard Time, had crashed into the south face of the South Tower, World Trade Center 2, between floors 77 and 85. Parts of the plane, including the starboard engine, leave the building from its east and north sides, fall into the ground 6 blocks away. At this time, it was now obvious to everyone what was going on. At 9:37, United Airlines Flight 77, bound for Los Angeles International Airport, crashes into the western side of the Pentagon and starts a violent fire. At 10:03, United Airlines 93, bound for San Francisco International Airport, crashed by its hijackers as a result of fighting in the cockpit 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh in Somerset County, Pennsylvania. At 9:59, the South Tower of the World Trade Center collapses 56 minutes after the impact of Flight 175. At 10:28, the North Tower of the World Trade Center collapses 1 hour and 42 minutes after impact of Flight 11. The Marriott Hotel located at the base of the 2 towers is also destroyed. During the September 11th, 2001 attacks, 2,977 people were killed, including 265 on 4 planes, 2,606 in the World Trade Centers and surrounding areas, and 125 people at the Pentagon. 343 firefighters and 71 law enforcement personnel died in the World Trade Centers and on the ground in New York City. 55 military personnel died at the Pentagon. That day will never be forgotten by those of us who were here for it, or were here, or where we were when we heard or saw what happened. Watching the news this morning, the emotions that I felt 20 years ago are still there. We probably didn't know to what extent at the time, but the events of that day, September 11, 2001, would forever alter the course of our country, the world, and change our lives forever. Chief Idle cannot be here this morning. He's in Monmouth for an NAACP ceremony commemorating 9/11. Sergeant Legate is here in his stead. I would like to invite up Executive Director of the United Way of Knox County, Lon Dunn.
Good morning. 20 years ago today, to some of us, it seems like the blink of an eye. Yet, looking at the young people here, it reminds me that to others, it's a lifetime. The post-9/11 world is the only one that they know. Those of us who were here on September 11th, 2001, certainly remember the uncertainty and fear that gripped us that day. We looked to the news outlets and witnessed the actions of so many who exemplified bravery. And we took comfort knowing that there were real-life action heroes in our midst. We promised that day, and on the days immediately following, that we would never forget. In light of recent events, the question becomes, How do we continue to do that? We remember those who ran toward the crisis to save those that they could, and in many ways, in many cases, they paid the ultimate price. We remember those who were launching their career and those who were nearing the finish line of retirement. We remember those who had heard what was happening and refused to sit idly by and let evil score another victory. But we need to do more than simply remember. We need to honor their memory, their bravery, and their sacrifice. We need to be the difference this world needs in our work, in our community, and in our service to others. Every day, I remind my children to earn their oxygen, and I strive to do the same. The images of the clouds of smoke and dust rising from ground zero in the aftermath of the attack made it evident that each breath we take can be put to good use. It can give us strength to help each other, the pause to calm ourselves in a tough situation, and the grace to remember that not everyone is at the same point in life's journey that we are. Each breath is a gift, and it is up to us to use it to show that we will never forget.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. My name is Mary Beth Commodini. I am a senior at Knoxville High School, and I'm also a member of Knox County Teen Court. And to those who have lost a loved one due to 9/11, I give my deepest condolences, and I am so very sorry. I will now read a few names and descriptions of some of the people that were killed on that tragic day. Francois Jean Pierre. He was 58, he lived in Brooklyn, New York, and he died at the World Trade Center. He was an employee of Windows on the World. Walid Iskandar. Walid was 34, and he was on American Flight 11 at the time of the accident. He lived in Boston, and he was a consultant at the Monitor Group in Cambridge. He moved to Boston in 1990 to begin his career as a consultant in the Monitor Group, a leading global strategy consulting firm in Cambridge. In 1993, he earned a master's degree in business administration from Harvard Business School, where he was a Baker Scholar. He loved to travel and recently returned from a vacation to Greece, where he and his fiancée were planning to be married next July. He was a food and wine enthusiast who loved yoga. He was fluent in French and Arabic. He was supposed to be studying for his MBA at Harvard, but unfortunately, he could not. He loved to water ski with his brother, and he was known for his zest of life and his devotion to Pink Floyd. He enchanted people, a lot of people, and he touched everybody. He was an introverted adventurer among innumerable excursions, and he biked 400 miles from San Francisco to Santa Monica, gone on safari in Africa, and explored the rainforests of South America, and stayed with the monks in India. Mr. Iskandar was the chief of digital strategy for Europe in the Monitor Group, lived in London, and was on Flight 11. He and his fiancée, Nicole Caballeros, had been visiting his brother in Boston. She was going to fly to California the day after the flight took, and they were going to be married that July. Amy Jarrett. Amy Jarrett was a flight attendant on the United Airlines 175, and she loved to travel. The men in Mrs. Jarrett's life marveled at her organizational skills. When she was around, everything ran smoothly, her brother said. Amy had decided to become a flight attendant only because the job market was bad when she graduated from Villanova University in 1994, and she had just happened to encounter a recruiter from a major airline on the campus there. Her father, R.M. Jarrett, said his daughter was hopelessly in love with her college boyfriend and that a glittering diamond engagement ring seemed only a month away. She was a rabid Notre Dame football fan who could call her dad in tears that the Fighting Irish were losing at halftime. Taizo Ishikawa. Taizo Ishikawa was 50 years old and a general manager of the New York branch of Fuji Bank. He died at the World Trade Center. Thank you for your time.
I'm Caden Erickson. I'm also a senior at Knoxville High School, and I'm going to read a couple names as well. Maxima Jean Pierre Miss Jean-Pierre was a food service administrator in the World Trade Center. She was an amazing leader who cared deeply about her coworkers. Her coworkers knew who was the boss when she walked in the room. She lived in Bellport, New York with her husband and 6 children. Paul E. Jeffers. Paul was an associate at Cantor Fitzgerald in the World Trade Center. In his free time, he was an avid landscaper and guitarist. He was teaching his 3-year-old son to play guitar at the time of his death. John Jenkins. John was a corporate office service manager for Charles River Associates in Los Angeles. He enjoyed collecting things. Anything, really. He collected anything from pots and pans to old New York Times articles. John lost his life on American Flight 11. Joseph Jenkins. Joseph died in the World Trade Center.
Hello, my name is Chloe Day, and I am a student at Galesburg High School, a senior, and I will continue to read names. Jason Jacobs was a business partner at Fiduciary Trust Co. on the 97th floor in the World Trade Center's South Tower. Mr. and Mrs. Jacobs had a 14-month-old daughter, Zoe. His wife described him as very hardworking, but at the same time, laid back and funny. His favorite dish was filet mignon and red line mushroom sauce. Jacobs would come home from work with a briefcase full of food and cooking magazines. They lived in Randolph, New Jersey, where Jacobs was born. Every Monday night, they would watch football together. Mark Jardim was native to New York City and was a senior vice president in investment administration at Zurich Scruder Investments. He was 39 years old, and he died in the World Trade Center. Aaron Jacobs was a vice president and partner on the international training desk at Cantor Fitzgerald at 27 years old. Jacobs liked to jog through Central Park, visit ethnic restaurants, visit museums, and he taught job skills to welfare recipients. His friends and family say he was a humble, really loving, and loyal person. Jacobs was planning to backpack in Africa with his fiancée Janine McAdder. He backpacked through Europe, taught English in Cozumel and Mexico, climbed a volcano in Greece, spent a semester in Madrid, and vacationed in the Caribbean and Central America. He died at the World Trade Center. Griselda E. James was 44 years old and was from Willingboro, New Jersey, who worked at the World Trade Center. Alexander Ivanstov, born April 25, 1972, in Russia. He had just moved to New York after being hired by Cantor Fitzgerald as a computer programmer. He loved dancing with his wife, whom he had married in 2000. He lost his wife at the World Trade Center. Lost his life. Charles Edward Jones was born November 4, 1952, in Clinton, Indiana. He graduated from the U.S. Air Force Academy and Massachusetts Institute of Technology with a degree in astronautical engineering. He was a member of the Air Force for 23 years with 2 years in a private sector. Mr. Jones gave scuba lessons on the weekends at Northeast Scuba in Chelmsford. He was married and had 4 siblings. He lost his life on American Flight 11. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Connor Loafing, and I am a senior at Galesburg High School and a member of Teen Corps. Udivar V. Jain. Udivar was his wife's dream. He encouraged her to buy clothes, he did the grocery shopping, and even showered her with flowers and greeting cards on not-so-special days. And every night, he always remembered to make her a cup of tea. Long after he finished his formal schooling, Mr. Jain, who had doctorates in computer science and chemical engineering, continued to study and upgrade his skills. He had only been at his job as a senior project manager at eSpeed Incorporated for a little over a month when he decided the position was not good for him. But rather than leave immediately, he decided to stay on and finish a project he had begun. A few weeks after September 11th, Mrs. Jain, his wife, received medicine for her migraine headaches. She was surprised because usually her husband bought it for her. She said, "Oh my God, maybe he's hiding somewhere, or maybe he's teasing me," she said. But it was just Mr. Jain being Mr. Jain. He had ordered her medicine on September 10th. Robert Jalbert. Robert Jalbert sold foams, all different types of foam. He sold the little bits found in the corners of printer cartridges. He also sold foam for parts of wheelchairs. He was 61 and had 20 years in the business. With just a look, he could advise clients on what kind of foam they needed, said his wife, Catherine. Mr. Jalbert, who lived in Swampscott, Massachusetts, was one of the salesmen at the Rogers Foam Corporation in Somerville, Massachusetts. He was also formerly in the Marine Reserve. He was going on a business trip when he left Boston's Logan Airport on United Flight 175, the second plane to hit the World Trade Center. Mr. Jalbert was a wine enthusiast and enjoyed working with his hands, creating many woodworking projects. He enjoyed traveling with his wife and spoke French fluently. He is survived by his wife of 36 years, Catherine, 2 daughters, Suzanne and Julie, a son, Michael, a brother, Paul, and 3 grandchildren. Scott Michael Johnson. Because Americans love to travel to Cuba, Scott Johnson had to go. He and his friend Steve Selwood spent 5 days in Havana in 1998, listening to music in one bar after another. Because he graduated with a minor in Jewish studies from Trinity College in Hartford, he had to explore Egypt. There, Scott and his friends made their way into a pyramid off limits to tourists. And right before a second jet crashed into the World Trade Center 2, where Mr. Johnson worked on the 89th floor as an analyst for Keefe, Bruyette, and Woods, he was making plans to visit South America next summer to explore a culture that fascinated him. Mr. Johnson also played golf with his father in Montclair, New Jersey, where he grew up, and cheered the Yankees from his couch at home. He was cherished for his quiet, firm sense of what was important: family, friends, knowledge, and adventure. Ernest James. Mr. James, who was 40 when he died, was an IT worker at financial company Marsh & McLennan, and was working on the upper floor of the North Tower when the first plane hit. His former fiancée, Monique Keyes, said that he used to work the night shift and would always call her in the morning when he was about to leave. On September 11th, her phone did not ring. Thank you.
My name is Lindsay Dunn, and I am a senior at Galesburg High School and a member of Knox County Teen Court. John F. Akizian was born April 11, 1960, in Manhasset, Long Island, New York. He joined Cantor Fitzgerald right out of college and worked his way up to partner. His brother-in-law described him as loyal, competitive, and everything he did was researched. In high school, he played lacrosse. After high school, he became an avid skier and hiker. He was married with a son and daughter, and he lost his life at the World Trade Center. Aram Iskandarian Jr. was born June 6, 1960, in Oceanside, Long Island, New York. He was a vice president in the global management at Cantor Fitzgerald. He loved his family and was very gentle and calm. He was married to his wife for 18 years after being together through high school and college. He had 2 daughters and twin sons. On that day, he lost his life at the World Trade Center. Virginia May Jablonski was born October 27, 1951, in Brooklyn, New York. She was employed by Marsh & McLennan. She loved traveling and trying different things. She had 2 cats, Bill and Fred, who she loved very much. She was married for 21 years, and her husband described her as a very bubbly and outgoing person who was always smiling. She lost her life at the World Trade Center. Vidar Gian was a resident of East Brunswick, New Jersey. He was 42 and an employee of Cantor Fitzgerald. Premnath Jarath, and he stayed to help. Mina Jarath remembers exactly what her husband was wearing that day: a summer suit with a blue striped shirt and a blue tie with a white design. She had picked it out as part of their morning ritual. He would rise first and start the tea and put her bagel in the toaster oven, and then he would be running a little late, and she would follow him out to the car with his tea. Premnath Jarath came to the United States from India in 1970. He and his wife married after a bit of encouragement from their parents. Both got bachelor's degrees. They had a son, Neil, in 1982. In their backyard in Edison, New Jersey, Mr. Girath would barbecue for friends. In the last few years, the number of visitors from India increased, and they would take them on tours to Niagara Falls, Florida, and Washington. On their vacations, we would have vacations too, Mrs. Girath said. As a structural engineer for the Port Authority, Mr. Girath, aged 57, had great faith in the Twin Towers. That might be why, Mrs. Girath said, her husband apparently stayed behind to help an injured colleague. During the bombing in 1993, she said he had walked a woman down 30 flights of stairs. Sometimes we still get angry that he sacrificed his life, Mrs. Girath said. But I don't think I would have liked him to run away from that sick person. Farah Judy. Her religion was the most important thing in Farah Judy's life. Everything revolved around that, said her sister-in-law, Suzette Judy. 3 times a week, Miss Judy, who lived with her parents in Spring Valley, New York, attended a Jehovah's Witness meeting with her mother. But while she was religious, she was far from somber. She loved traveling in the Bahamas and being with friends. Anyone who ever heard Farah relate a story may not remember the story, according to the tribute read at her memorial service. But they can remember laughing until their sides hurt. Born in Haiti, Ms. Judy, aged 32, came to this country as a child and later graduated from Baruch College. For 8 years, she left home at 6 a.m. to commute to her job as an administrative assistant at the Aon Corporation. But if one of her nephews was taking part in a Jehovah's Witnesses meeting, Ms. Judy would always be there, not caring that her trip home would be even longer. Alan K. Jensen was 49, and he was of Wyckoff, New Jersey. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ethan Warren, and I'm a member of the Galesburg Youth Athletic Club. Brooke Alexandra Jackman. At just 23, Brooke had the role as a family historian. Her mother said that her memory was so good that not only could she tell you what was said, but what everyone was wearing at the time. She loved to read and would stop by Borders bookstore almost daily on her way home from her new job as a bond trader at Cantor Fitzgerald. She was in the process of fulfilling her dream as a social worker. Michael G. Jacobs. Outside of work, Michael Jacobs enjoyed rebuilding a VW Bug and learning to play the bagpipes. A friend recalls asking him from time to time, "How is the World Trade Center today?" And he'd say, "It's still here, still here." Michael worked on the 90th floor of 2 World Trade Center. He was 54. Rick Noth Jaggernoth. Rick Noth lived in a 2-story house in Brooklyn with his wife, 5 children, and 3 grandchildren. He was so proud to be a grandfather or a father and a grandfather. Rick Noth was working for a company that was remodeling offices on the 104th floor of the first tower the day it was attacked. Rick Noth was 58. Jake Jagoda. Early on in Jake's life, he had a special knack for fishing. He really enjoyed fly fishing and making his own flies. At 13, he started working on a fishing boat and later became a tackle salesman. In 2001, he became a trader at Cantor Fitzgerald, but never lost his passion for fishing. Jake Jagoda was 24. Sergeant Major Lacey B. Ivory. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eloise. I'm a senior at Galesburg High School and also a member of the Knox County Teen Court. Eliezer Jimenez Jr. was supposed to be on vacation that week, but his bosses at Windows on the World called him at home on Sunday. He asked if he would if he would fill in that week for someone else. My son was such a good worker, of course he said he would do it, said his father, Eliezer Jimenez. The younger Mr. Jimenez had worked as a chef's assistant at the restaurant for less than 2 years. He had begun working there part-time, his father said, while he worked at another restaurant in Midtown, because he needed the money to support his 4 children. When the other restaurant closed down, Mr. Jimenez went to work at Windows full-time. When he was not working, Mr. Jimenez, age 37, was usually at his disciples of Christ Church. When he was 6, his mother died while giving birth. His father moved with his 3 sons to Puerto Rico, and they returned to New York a few years later. The younger Mr. Jimenez lived in Washington Heights with his wife and children. He was my son, my friend, my everything, Mr. Jimenez said. He was my firstborn. They have stolen him from me. Died at the World Trade Center. Lieutenant Colonel Dennis M. Johnson. During his stint in the Army, Lieutenant Colonel Dennis Johnson had numerous responsibilities. But the most difficult job he held during that time was being sent to the homes of the grieving families who had lost a son or daughter in the military service. He knew that it was an important job, said Sister Catherine Kaiser, a pastoral administrator at St. Alexander Catholic Church in Port Edwards, Wisconsin, where Johnson grew up. Johnson, age 48, was born and raised in Port Edwards. He graduated from the University of Wisconsin in Stevens Point. In the Army, he worked in the tank division before being moved to the Pentagon. He was married and had 2 daughters, Kaiser said. He was such a caring person. Died at the Pentagon. Lashana Johnson. Lashana Johnson's name was the stuff of family legend. When her mother sat down to print the name on her birth certificate, she inadvertently inserted the A between the W and the N, spelled Lashawana, but pronounced Lashana. The name was a constant source of confusion to people. Not that Miss Johnson, 27, minded. She extended the same consideration to co-workers and strangers that she showed to her 3 children, whose photographs lined her cubicle on the 83rd floor of the First World Trade Center, where she worked as a customer service manager for General Telecom. A single mother to 7-year-old Jade Ashley, 5-year-old Gerard Maurice, and 2-year-old Jordan Timothy, Miss Johnson had spent most of her free time either with her kids or devising ways to surprise them. Many times she would come in with packages from the World Trade Center Mall. Shirts, blouses, pants, outfits, all for those kids, said Willie Barreto, who worked with Miss Johnson. To support her family, Miss Johnson, who lived in East New York, Brooklyn, awoke at 4 a.m., got her kids dressed and off to the sitters by 5:30 a.m., then often arrived at her office in time to see the sunrise. On weekends, she was up early and out the door with her children again. She made sure that every weekend they were very active, said Miss Johnson's mother, Lois Johnson. They never stayed home. She died in the World Trade Center. Nicholas John passed away at the World Trade Center, age 42, of New York City. Louis Jimenez Jr. By the end of the year, Louis Jimenez Jr. was planning to be a married man on his way to graduate school. Everything seemed to be adding up for Mr. Jimenez, age 25. 25-year-old March and McLennan accountant who lived in Corona, Queens. As a boy, he was so bent on a future in finance that he would go to the grocery store with his parents and figure out the bill on his little wrist calculator before shopping was done. The details were everything. He couldn't propose on just any day, so he set his girlfriend's birthday in November as a moment to pop the question. 2 weeks before the attack on the World Trade Center, he asked her parents' permission and started laying plans to buy the perfect ring. When he was a boy, age 10, he told me, "Daddy, I want to be an independent man to take care of myself," said Mr. Jimenez's father. He reached his dream. He made his family so happy. In every room there is a picture of him. He was a son to be proud of. Died at the World Trade Center.
Hi, I'm Lydia Reed, and I am a student at Galesburg Christian School. Donald T. Jones II, age 39, born in New Jersey, November 4th, 1961. Lived in Livingston, New Jersey, and was employer for Cantor Fitzgerald. Stephen A. Jacobson, age 53, born and lived in New York, May 25th, 1948. Stephen worked for WPIX TV. Arthur J. Jones III, age 37, born in Brooklyn, New York, June 25th, 1964. Lived in Ossining, New York, worked for Care Futures. Stephen D. Jacoby, age 43, born in Harrison, Pennsylvania, December 11, 1957. Lived in Alexandria, Virginia. He was a passenger on Flight 77. Worked as Chief Operating Officer of Metrocol. Kasuji Ito, age 36, born in Hiroshima, Japan, on November 19, 1965. Lived in Manhattan, New York. Worked at Fuji Bank. Thank you.
I am Antoinette London, a freshman at Galesburg High School. I am with the Galesburg Youth Athletic Club. I have 5 names for you today. Maria Jakubuk was born May 31st, 1961 in Poland. Maria had 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. She was like a mother to the co-workers, for it was her first job in the U.S. Sadly, it was her last. Muhammad Jawara was born July 20th, 1971 in Banjul, Gambia. Muhammad was an employee of Mass Security. Allison Horseman Jones was born July 23rd, 1970 in Hackensack, New Jersey. Allison was quite an energetic woman. She did sports such as biking, hiking, running, and swimming. She excelled at them all. Charles Gregory John was born January 28, 1957 in Guyana. Charles had 5 siblings, but he was very close with his sister Charlene. He was a father of 3 who took responsibility for all his children. William R. Johnston was born December 1st, 1969 in Queens, New York. He was the first responder. He had 4 siblings, one being Diane Cuff. William played professional indoor soccer. Thank you.
My name is Elena Dunn, and I'm a junior at Galesburg High School. Ariel Louis Jacobs was born September 16, 1971 in the Bronx. He was the chief of U.S. operations for Kaplan Systems. He loved his friends, family, and his wife Jenna, who gave birth to Ariel's son Gabriel just 6 days after he lost his life in the World Trade Center, and 1 day after what would have been his birthday. Donald W. Jones was born the 27th of August, 1958. He grew up in Levitton, Pennsylvania, and loved NASCAR, the Dallas Cowboys, playing softball with his friends, and coaching his daughter's basketball team. He was married with 2 beautiful children. Brian Jack was born January 3rd, 1953 in Tyler, Texas. He lived in Alexandria, Virginia, and was a budget analyst and director of programming and fiscal economics
with the Defense Department. Brian Leander Jones, born May 9th, 1957, in the Queens, New York. He was a system administrator with IBM Global. Christopher D. Jones, born September 14th, 1947, in Heswall, England. He was a partner at Cantor Fitzgerald. He was a loving husband and father to his 2 daughters. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Paula Johnson, and I'm the director of Knox County Teen Court. And Knox County Teen Court was applied for a grant to become a 9/11 community. And what this entails is that we would have to hold a program on the 20th anniversary of 9/11 and read 50 names. There was 100 communities that were eligible for this honor, 2 from each state. Galesburg was one for Illinois, and the other one was in Berwyn, Illinois. Each site will be reading off a brief bio of 50 names. So this way, all 2,977 victims will be having their names read across the United States, as a flag would be flying across the United States. Our flag is number 28, and it also has a memorial, and it'll say Galesburg, Illinois, at the 9/11 Memorial in New York City at Ground Zero. I would like to present this flag on behalf of Knox County Teen Court, the Knox County United Way, and the citizens of Galesburg and Knox County to the Galesburg Police Department and the Galesburg Fire Department. Thank you. This concludes our ceremony.